Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics head-to-head episode where we put two players up against each other to see who will be picking between the two for 2025. This is episode 8 of the series. If you haven't checked out the other 7 episodes, make sure you do. Plenty of really good guests and relevant players have already been discussed already. We've got, 5 episodes left. So 2 more this week, 3 next week. So 12 episode series and we're done because we haven't only around the week after. So we'll be finished up just before that. But today we're chatting about 2 Sydney Swans defenders, or one of them, maybe not so much a defender, being Matt Roberts and Callum Mills. And joining me is a very special guest, fellow South Australian, one of the favourites to get on the channel. It is Jake from HatChat, coach of Dunkley's Donuts. Jake, mate, how are you?
Bales, thank you, mate. Thanks for having us on. Very well. Very excited to talk about this one. I know that these 2 players have made their way into my team, made their way out of my team, and probably very similar for a lot of coaches out there. It's a good chat to have. I know that we'll talk not just about these players, but specifically round 3 by defenders in general. I think it's a hot topic. So awesome to chat, mate.
Exactly, mate. And I thought it was fitting to get you on because you love Sydney players from based on the last couple of years from Gordon and Heaney and who's going to be this year. Might be one of the 2 if you don't pick them. So watch this space for Jake in terms of team reveals before the start of the season. Whichever one he doesn't have, maybe you pick that one. But you'll be taking Matt Roberts today. I'll be taking Callum Mills. And as always, we start off with our guest to chat about that player. So, Jake, why should people be picking Matt Roberts in their classic side for 2025?
It's ironic that you say about the Matt Roberts. Obviously, that is who I've chosen. I'm excited to talk about him. But I did say not 2 weeks ago on the podcast that Callum Mills wasn't in my team. So just on that alone, we should maybe just end the podcast here because we know if I leave a Sydney player out, you should be picking them. So there's probably not too much more to say. But on a more important note, I think Matt Roberts, anyone who was watching a bit of footy last year would have seen a heck of a lot of him in the Swans back line. And, the old Jake Lloyd role that, we all used to love a good BT Lloyd. But there's something about Matty Roberts that I think has just filled the void where Lloyd has pushed a little bit higher up and we've seen a significant regression there. Obviously started the year like an absolute house on fire. No tons, but consistent 80s, 90s guy. And we saw him being that ever reliable after, I think, 2023. He had that injury. I know I brought him in to my side. He gets injured.
Geelong, I think.
Yeah, I think knee just before halftime. And from memory, he was filling a hole for me that week, and it was a bit of a disaster all around. But he's bounced back with this defensive role that looks absolutely delightful. Now, people would be seeing his price, people would be seeing his average from 2024 and thinking, oh, yeah, 76, not too bad. The best thing that you've got to consider, though, when it comes to Matt Roberts is he had 3 sub games in that. And I think 2 of those were injuries from memory and one of them upon return from an injury. And those scores were 11, 24, and 37. So you start to take them out. He's already almost 10 points underpriced. So we're always looking for value in this game. How can you not see value in that? Now, not only that, this is the 2nd year for him in this role. He really was finding his feet last year. His 2nd year, we expect progression even further from that. I guess the question is, will Sydney be as good this year? Because if the answer is no, maybe he's taking more kick-ins. Maybe the ball will be in the back line a little bit more. So there's a lot of positives that I see for the Matt Roberts train this year. I think none more so, though. We said he started the year well, no tons. Well, look how he finished the year. Last 6 regular season games, we saw 102, 138, 93, 91, 93, and 125. So a comfy 105 average over that period of time, priced in the mid-70s. Why wouldn't you want him? That's what I'm going to ask you, Bales.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Matt Roberts, obviously, being another South Australian as well, obviously himself. But he's everything that you sort of want that halfback guy to be now. Like he's not only is he good at distributing, but he's also good defensively as well, which I think Sydney and the coaches will like the fact that he can also hold his own defensively. But it's his kick, right? His kick is obviously his best attribute. He's laser-like kick there. And as you said, he's pushed a guy like Jake Lloyd up to a wing just because they want to try and fit him in. So I think that he'll get at least part of the kick-ins. Obviously, Blakey's always going to be probably the main kick-in taker and can take a lot of them. But there's a chance that Roberts gets some of those +6s like we saw last year from the kick-ins. He does call for those +6s, particularly when they're chipping around the back. And if Sydney aren't going to be as good with obviously the weaker forward line this year and a few moving pieces and a new coach, as you said, more kick-ins, more ball down there, that's obviously better for us. The one thing I did hear, obviously, Mitch from Ball Boys chatting about when they were talking through Sydney and what to watch for in the practice game coming up this week was how Justin McInerney was out a lot in that run where he did actually go quite well. Do you see Justin McInerney being obviously back and everything? Do you see that being a main contributor to why Matt Roberts and his scoring was up, and then obviously it dipped a tiny bit when he came back? Or do you think that was just almost a bit of a coincidence and matchups and everything else?
Oh, I mean, I don't know that anything's a coincidence, right? Like, I'd be a pretty ballsy guy to say, "Oh, it was just a coincidence." I guess what I really want to do is have a quick, look into the games that Justin McInerney played last year and go, "All right, what does it look like across the entire spate?" And when you consider that he played the start of the year, and we saw Roberts playing really well at the start of the year, I think that's just a starting point for us to go that, all right, Roberts and McInerney, it's not entirely correlated. I think everything has an impact, right? More senior players that come into the side are probably going to take some level of ball. But I guess if you look at that in the discussion we've already had, Matt Roberts is now a slightly more senior player than he was a year ago. And if they were giving him the license last year, I just wondered to myself, what are they going to be giving him this year? Sure. Do I think he's going to go the 105 run that he finished the year with? Probably not. But does he need to? No. I think he really needs to be a 90 guy. And if you think he's going to score 90 this year, you should be picking him. That's 10 to 15 points of upside. It gets him close to top 10 or around the top 10 mark in the defensive line. And for both of those reasons, it's a justifiable pick.
Exactly. And you talked about as well, if you take the sub games and injury games and everything like that out, it's nearly 10 points of upside. And I know that we don't love picking the guys that we just think are going to go from natural progression. But I think it's got that. I know DT Lemon and Selby and that have talked about, like, you don't want just one or the other. If you've got a couple of factors that, like, new team or new role or anything like that, two of them go in, then that makes it a better pick. I think you can mix in the injury affected games, but also that little bit of natural progression as well, right? Like, if he's averaging over 90 in that role last year, you'd expect the time on ground maybe to take a slight bump. Now, obviously, with no subs and everything like that, you'd expect, obviously, another preseason in that role, so they're getting more confident again. And I guess the other thing with these two guys, right, is we get to see them in opening round. So you actually get to have a look at the role and have a look at how much better or anything like that he is in that role. And you get double price rise if he goes really well. So I think that's the interesting thing about both these players. And we'll chat about Callum Mills now, because I do want to touch on, before we normally we just do the two players, but I want to quickly touch on the round 3 buy players. I think it's a good discussion to have. But with Callum Mills, it's pretty much as simple as I think you just pick him, to be honest. But I will make the case for him and why you should. So Callum Mills last year, injuries is what hampered him, right? He only played the 7 games last year, 75% time on ground. So clearly there were games where he was managed, because he's been a guy that's played over 80% time on ground from 2017 to 2022. And 2023 was 79%. So he's been that high time on ground guy. And as I said, that 70.6 average you can't take too much into it, right? Because you look at, like, the games here, like, he 62% time on ground, 63%, 69%, and like scores of 44, 70, 63. Then he scored a 44 from 82% time on ground. His last 2 games, he scored 91 and 107. So that was some better scores. But again, didn't have any CBAs there. Like, he had CBAs in a few of the games before that stretch, where he had like 35%, 10%, and 29%. So I feel like those 7 games you can almost write off coming back from injury. If we look back to 2022 and 2023, where he was this midfielder, where he had 66% CBAs in 2021 and then 56% CBAs in 2022, had the 37% the year before as well. From those 2 seasons when he's a midfielder, because that's what he's been looking like he's going to be doing, he averaged 109.6 in 2021 and 109.4 in 2022. And I think that's including a finals game in 2022 as well. So from the 25 games, could even be over 110 if you took that game out. Actually, I'll have a quick look. 2023, take that game out, score 88. Yeah, so it's over 110, right? some big scores when he's been in this role. So like multiple scores over 110, a heap of scores over 130, and obviously highlighted by that. Where was it? It was against Hawthorn. It was, the 162 against Hawthorn. That was from 74% time on ground as well. So he's got the ability in the midfield. He's one of those premium midfielders that we had in our team, and he's available for us at around that sort of 70, I think priced at 72 or 73, I believe. So a very, very cheap price and available as defender for someone that has got a ceiling of a 110 average. Whether he's going to get there or not, I'd probably say no, just because Warner's there and he's obviously a lot more prominent in the midfield. Heaney's moved into the midfield now. Goulden's obviously grown as a player last couple of years as well. So I still think an average of 95 plus is very cheap. And I think you go 100 to 105. Again, not going to rule out a 110 average, but for someone priced in the mid 70s or lower 70s and it could go well over that, I just think you've got to pick him. And we get that look in opening round. So, Jake, mate, what do you think about Mills? Do you sort of agreeing with most of the things I'm saying, or any other points on Mills you wanted to chat about?
It just depends how you want me to play this, because I can play the supporter or I can play the devil's advocate, and I think
go whichever direction you see fit.
The HatChat podcast prides itself on being devil's advocates to each other to
do
really incite some good conversation. So
do the devil's advocate.
That's what I'll do. I think, okay, let's use Tom Mitchell as an example. Tom Mitchell, absolute gun, fantasy pig, of the competition. I'm in a draft at the moment. I think we're about 150 picks in, and I can tell you whose name has not been called, and it's Tom Mitchell. And what I mean by that is he's passed it. And if you look at the age of Tom Mitchell, when you look at the profile, they're not the same type of player. But, why is it necessarily any different between Tom Mitchell and Callum Mills? You look at Callum Mills as 2023. You talked about 2021 and 2022. But 2023, what did he average? He averaged 84. Now, he had that injured 3 in it, which any avid listener of the HatChat podcast will recall Sanch captaining him for the 3 after trading him in that week. So it's a day of infamy on the podcast. But, he had a 3 in that, but he also had 155 in the final round, which was an absolute
a bit
out of box score. So he really was an 85 average in 2023, playing a similar-ish role. He played a lot of midfield time that year still. He didn't have the same levels of the year before, but we haven't seen that 110 number from him for 2 full seasons now. Now, 2023, he had that injury. He missed significant time. Last year, pre-season, whatever went on there, we'll leave that to behind the closed doors in the Swans dressing room on end-of-season trips. But he's gone and got himself injured again. I guess I have to ask, is he the player that he was 2 years ago? Because even in 2023, I think outside of that 155, he put up 2 tons across the whole year. And he missed 4 or 5 games, granted, but that's still 17 games where you're averaging a ton every 8 weeks. I'd put a line through him being a 110 guy today. I'd put a line through him being a 100 guy today. If I'm honest, is he in my team at the moment? Yes, he is. And that's because I think if he's a pure mid, he's probably a 90s guy. But I guess I do ask, is that any different to what we expect from Matt Roberts? I think there's that little bit of extra certainty because of the captaincy and how the Swans clearly view Callum Mills. But I don't know. I'm really not as hot as a lot are. I do understand why so many teams have him. And, of course, as I already alluded to, I have him as well at this stage. But I think it's purely that you're picking him on that role, not on the expectation he gets back to anything we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and it is a very, very good point you raised, because I'm looking like obviously 2023 here, like as you said, he averaged the essentially the 85 if you remove that 155 and then the injured 3. I'm just looking at here in the CBA numbers in that year as well, and they were very up and down. So so the first 3 games he played under 40%. Then he had a 69% CBA game, back down to 27%. Then didn't attend any CBAs in round 5, 10%, 47%, 63%. And then obviously the injured game came back, only played 55% against West Coast. If you remember that was the game, I think, where they scored 200 points or whatever, Sydney did. Then he played 3 games in a row of 76%, 63% and 60%, back down to 3%, 12%, 19%, 24%, ended with 88%, then 77%. So I feel like that year with the 85, it was very up and down. He didn't, and we know that football players, continuity is a big thing. If they get settled in a role and injury free, right? I feel like that year was very up and down. His role continually changed. John Longmire would put him behind the ball as an extra defender. And I don't really think it like worked probably as well as maybe what Sydney thought it did, because he went down there for times, but they still got scored on. I feel like this year, it sounds like Dean Cox is like, yeah, we're going to settle him into a midfield role. It's good to have, and his words were saying, an all-Australian midfielder and our captain back in, and essentially saying he'll be playing mostly midfield. Will he spend time on the wing? More than likely, yes, because they've got a lot of good midfielders. They've got Warner, they've got Heaney, Goulden, Rowbottom, Papley goes through there. Shout out to Mrs. DC for that one there. People can run through there, right? So I don't think he's going to become like the back over 70% and 60, like mid 60% CBA guy that he was in 2021, 2022. But do I think he's a 50% CBA guy? Probably. 50, 55% is probably where I got him pegged, and I could see maybe 60%. But I don't know if I see much more than that, because I think Sydney are going to spread it out over a few guys. So I feel like the 85, you can bump that up a tiny bit with the continuity of the mid-roll. And I think, yeah, if you can get somewhere in the mid-90s as an average there. But obviously there is a world where he goes obviously 100 plus. Whether he gets there or not, I think is going to be interesting to see. But as I said with Roberts, same with Mills, we get a look at him in opening round, and we get to see the role, and we can judge it based on that. And it'll be interesting to see if he scores like a 78 or an 80 in opening round, playing midfield. Are people going to get scared off, even though he's got the midfield role? If Roberts goes up 110, are they going to go from Mills to Roberts? What's going to happen? So opening round is going to be very interesting with these two players, which is why I want to quickly touch on before we finish off the episode with round 3 bye players, particularly the defenders. How many is too many? Because we've got a heap of them there. We've got, obviously, Mills and Roberts, who we're chatting about now. If someone's apart, you've got a Max Holmes. You've got a Dan Houston as a opening round. If someone to start him, he's got the round 3 bye. Then you go down Tom Stewart. Apparently played some CBAs in the game a couple of days ago. He's got the round 3 bye. Keep going down. Harry Perryman has also got that round 3 bye. Sam DeConey's got the round 3 bye. Like there's a couple of others I haven't mentioned.
You could have a starting 6 all on the round 3 bye if you wanted to, of genuine considerations.
Exactly. And if Caneen Coleman was fit, he would have been another one as well. So there's so many guys there. So how many is too many, do you think?
I think 3 is too many. I think that's a real hard line for me, because if you're running 3, you're locking in 21 on field that week, and that's assuming both of your rookies play. If one of your rookies play, whether you're going down the Zach Reid, James Leake, Bo Allen, there's a lot of different structures that kind of coming into play. If one of them play, you're playing with 20. I don't think you're planning on bringing any of these guys that we've just listed off to trade at round 3. I mean, if they're not performing, sure, it's an easy trade, but you're not bringing them in with the idea to trade. So if you're at worst case 19, you're going to have to cop a stinker score or 2 from a couple of rookies that other teams just aren't going to have to. I'm struggling with the idea of 2 personally, but I think you could make that work, because most teams are going to have 3. I think most teams are going to start either Roberts or Mills. They're going to start Levi Ashcroft, and they're going to start Bailey Smith. So you're going to have 3 of your starting 22 on the bye. You're going to probably cover Levi Ashcroft pretty easily with either a Finn O'Sullivan, Smiley, someone in your M7, M8. It's not going to cost you points. Your forward line, you probably should have someone playing. They're probably not going to score as much as Bailey Smith, though. So it's going to be an extra score that might drop. So if you find yourself 1 or 2 extra shy on top of that 1 you're almost guaranteed to have, you could be burning 40, 50, 60 points each extra player you have. So, yeah, I think 2 you could do, but you've got to be really happy with the 2 that you're picking. But 3, be too rich for my blood bars.
Yeah. I think 3 is probably my limit. I think 4 is just way too many. And funny enough, you could easily pick 4 of these players based on value alone. I think a lot of them offer great value, and it's not even just the Perryman, Roberts, Mills, DeConey, guys like that. I still think guys like a Max Holmes presents good upside. Dan Houston, if he wasn't suspended for opening round and you could watch him, presents good upside. Tom Stewart, if he's got that same role, playing CBAs, drifting back, he's got value. So a lot of these guys you could easily make a case to start all of them. But the thing is we can't start all of them because this buy. So I think 3, And that being the third one, if you were starting a Sam De Koning, would be the one, and then two of these guys over 700. I think if you start three of the guys over 700, that's probably getting a bit much for me. And if you start three, you probably are, as you said, maybe looking at trading someone. Or I know Holmesy's chatted about it as well. Maybe you just take that hit for the week. Maybe you play the 21 and you go, yeah, they're for the upside, but that's it. If you're doing four and you were taking two off and you've only got 20 players, that's where I think it starts getting too much.
I think the one thing I just want to reiterate, though, to the listeners is you could take the hit if you're guaranteed 21, but I wouldn't say Bo Allen is any better than the 20th man on West Coast list. James Leake may be in for a debut with Tom Green, I'd hope, for a lot of people, but he's going to be back after his bye, which is round 3. Zach Reed, I think he looked great on the weekend. I think there's every chance he's best 22, but he's still a key defender. Whose score you're going to take? So are you really taking 21? Like,
yeah, exactly.
You have to feel really... You have to be really confident. Unless you're running a Travalia D7 kind of name, I think there's every chance you've got to be going in knowing you're running 19. And if you're running 19, what scores are you willing to cop? Because that's best case. But in the game that we play, that is the wonderful
Injuries,
world of AFL fantasy, how often does best case happen, guys?
Yeah, exactly. And how many times have we had like weeks where we have 2 injuries? You got 2 forced trades, and there's no 3 trades in these early buys, as we know. Only the 2 trades. It is best 18, but you've got to sort of balance that with best 18 and also how many players are you risking in that round 3 buy. So I think it's really interesting. I think it's a great discussion. I'm sure we'll probably all be chatting about it on all the pods leading up to opening round, and obviously the opening round scores could mean that people are plugging in more than what they think, and then all of a sudden they've got it. Maybe if you played a defender at utility, that's the only way I could see you play more. But I think there's so many good mid rookies. There's a lot of good forward rookies, it looks like now, from what we've seen in these pracky games. So it's like, can you really put a defender rookie there? But you might have to if you're going to be going a bit deeper. So very, very interesting. But we will be deciding who will be picking out of the 2. So, Jake, if you had to pick one of Matt Roberts or Callum Mills, who are you picking? With the asterisks, the opening round may also be the time bet. But as of right now, who would you be picking?
I think this is where my head and my heart tell me 2 different things. My heart actually says Matt Roberts. I think we've seen a real switch to that halfback kick-in guy almost taking over as the elite players of AFL Fantasy to the traditional CBA midfielder in the past. You know, you see the top scorers from last year being the likes of a Whitfield, Sheasel, Zorko, rather than your traditional ball midfielder. So for that alone, I think there's every chance that Roberts' role is even better. But my head, on the other hand, tells me you go safety in numbers. No one's missing Callum Mills. And I can't go 3 years in a row fading a Swans player that the rest of the competition is going to own. So for that reason, I'm picking Callum Mills. But I genuinely think there is every part that Matt Roberts outscores him this year.
Yeah. And I definitely could see a world where that could be the case. I'm going Mills, probably just, again, a bit more the safety, as you said. But then also, I feel like there would be a world where Mills could go 105 if everything worked and he was one of the main guys in the Sydney midfield. Could I see Roberts doing that over a season? Probably not. I think I'd see more as a 95 to 100 guy, best case, just because Blakey's still there, right? If Roberts is the number 1 back there, I think there could be a world in the future where if he's the number 1 guy, he could average over 100. I think that's definitely within the capabilities. But whether that happens this year or not, I'm not sure. I still think that they both go over 90. And I think that they're both good picks. As I said, just depends. Can you have both, and can you have these other guys? So as it currently sits, do you have... Actually, no, before I ask you that as well, I should have probably said at the start of the episode as well, their price and ownership. I forgot to do that before. But yeah, so Roberts, 780K, 11.1% ownership. So a little bit less ownership than a Callum Mills, who's 759K, so 21K less and 44% ownership. So as you say, the numbers there. And dare say if Mills was to go like over 100 in opening round, that number's going to probably increase to that 50% or maybe a little bit more. And if Roberts, on the other hand, does it, that could go up to 30, 35%, even more. So opening round will be a big teller. But what I was going to ask you was, do you have one of them in your team, both? How are you sitting at the moment?
It's Callum Mills at the moment. Matt Roberts has been in and out a lot. It's just me toying with the idea of 2 defenders. I think if I go 2 defenders in the defensive line on the bye, I might start them both. I think there's every world you could. But for now, safety in numbers. I only want the one on the bye if I can help it, and it's Callum Mills.
Yeah, I've got Callum Mills at the moment. As early as this morning, I had both, and I had both actually for a while. But Chuck Perryman in there. It's been Perryman and Roberts that have swapped more so. Mills has been set there for the moment, whether obviously lightning round will determine if he starts. But then the news of DeConing with the ruck, he's in. So it's like then there's 3. Is that too many? It's sort of a lot. I think the defense is such a difficult position. I don't think we've got much more clarity as the defense as the preseason's gone on, because players are still got question marks. The top. I still think that, and we'll chat about maybe him on another episode, but she's always still, I think, could be a play if someone just wanted to go stuff it and just pay up, because defense is so hard and it's very interesting. And yeah, it's a tough one. But that'll just for that head-to-head episode today. I feel like these 2 guys in defense we could talk about for well over an hour, but we'll leave those for other podcasts and for the HatChat boys to be chatting about as well. But Jake, thank you very much for jumping on another episode again, mate. Very much appreciate it. Where can the people find you across the socials? And also, what can people be expecting from the HatChat podcast for the rest of preseason, then going into the season proper? Because I know you guys got a couple of things going on.
Yeah, thank you, Bales. Yes, you'll find me at Dunkley's Donuts. I did a pretty big wrap on the Bulldogs Essendon match sim on the weekend, so you can see that on there. You find the group, of course, the podcast at HatChat AFL on all the important socials. Tonight, I'm actually going to jump straight into a recording with the boys. We're going to be doing a little bit of rookies, a little bit of match sim, and a bit of team reviews as well. So jump in Spotify, Apple Podcasts for that. And then the next couple of weeks are going to be much like most of the podcasts. We'll be doing our reviews of the match sims, review of the preseason games, and then straight into opening round and final teams. So only a couple of weeks left before the excitement bails. So very exciting times all around. Hopefully we can have a couple of extra hats to add to the one hat of HatChat at this point in time this season. We certainly try to target the guys that want to push for that hat, not just win their leagues, but really take it to the top end of town. So best of luck to everyone this year. Come ask us some questions, and best of luck to us all.
Exactly. And also Wednesday nights during the season, if for the listeners that don't know about that, what do you guys got as well on the Wednesday?
We get the golden tonsils at his Bales most weeks on to help us out. Twitter Spaces during the season, a bit of a live pod instead of asking questions, and we try to get to them on our standard recording. You guys can jump on, ask us some questions live, get your voices on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and just talk that week's goss, if absolutely nothing else. So it's a good chance to catch up with the community and give everyone a bit of a voice.
Yeah, exactly. Get around it. Make sure you guys do. It's always good fun, either jumping on or even just listening and listening to all the discussion there. So make sure you guys get around that. Follow Jake, follow the boys at HatChat. I'm sure a lot of you do, but if you don't already, make sure that you guys go and do that. You can find me at BAILSDT, and you can find us at AFL Fantasy Fans. Let us know in the comments below. Are you guys starting both the Sydney guys? Who are the other round 3 bye players you're starting? How many is too many for you? Who are you fading out of that? Anything like that, let us know in the comments, and any other questions, obviously, go there as well. And also, if you guys didn't see the news on Sunday night, our Patreon, the AFL Fantasy Fanatics Patreon, has dropped. It is live for 2025. So the link's in the description, patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics. There's a cash prize for an exclusive Patreon league as well. So make sure you guys get involved with that as well. There's also Monday night live streams where you guys can jump on and do team reviews. There's a heap of bunch. I've put up a photo on Instagram and Twitter where you guys can see all the benefits, or just go to the website, patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics, to get see all the benefits there. And if you'd like to help support us and also just get some extra bonus content, then make sure you guys get around that. But I'll be jumping on for another episode on Friday with another member of HatChat, DC, and I'll be chatting about another couple of defenders. No early buy for those 2, but could they be the answer to that $1 million defender that you are going to be starting for 2025? So guys, tune in on Friday for that. Thanks everyone for tuning in once again, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Catch you later, guys. See ya.